I've recorded a lot of podcasts in the last year. I've worked a lot on making this show what it is now, and I have to say thank you to everyone who is currently subscribing. But one of the things that I never expected is that for me, and I'm sorry for bringing this up because it's kind of gauche, but I never expected to be making more off of the podcast than off of my books. So I'm find myself in a strange place where I think that this podcast is maybe less of a hobby and more of a vocation. And I'd like to talk about that on today's Project Shadow.
Can you hear me? I have something to say. Project Shadow starts now.
Hello everyone, how are you doing today? My name's Charlie. You might know me better as sci-fi fantasy writer C.E. Dorset. And maybe you don't. Maybe you know me better as the podcaster of this show, which is a strange and bizarre feeling for me, and it's something that I really want to talk about. But before we get into all that, if you haven't already, please do take a moment to rate this podcast in whatever app you're listening to me on. It really does help out a lot. It tells the algorithms to share the podcast with more people. The more people that listen, the bigger the community. The bigger the community, the better the chance we have of actually communicating with each other. And after all, that's honestly why I do this podcast, which is why today's episode is just going to feel so weird to talk about. See, I don't like talking about money, and I don't like talking about success or failure or any of those things because they're really in the eye of the beholder. But as I'm in this phase where I am reassessing my life and my goals and trying to figure out what I'm going to be doing in the year to come, well, I'm faced with an unusual truth for me. I started this podcast almost 15 years ago, and, well, a long time ago. And, yeah, I never really thought about it as more than just something that I would do for fun. I never really thought about it as a career because I just like talking. If you haven't noticed, I mean, I do a daily podcast. I just like talking. And I thought, maybe there are some people out there who would like to listen to some of the random and strange ideas that go through my head. And so I started a podcast back really in the early days of podcasting. I've worked with a lot of companies over the years that promised that they would help me actually build an audience and have money from doing this, from Podshow to Blueberry to just a lot, PodTracker, a lot of different companies over the years. And while they made big promises, they never actually delivered. And that was fine with me. This wasn't something that I did for money. It was something that I did for fun. And a couple years ago, I started playing around with Anchor, and they promised that they would help me not only build an audience, but find a way to make money doing this show. And they didn't lie. Now, some of you are probably going to think that this is an infomercial because depending on what my ads are right now, I do have an ad running for Anchor on this podcast, but that's not what it is. It's more about I never expected that this might be a way I could support my work. You see, I've been focused on things like Patreon, and I've been focused on selling copies of the books that I do. And the idea that I could ever make money from talking, from doing a podcast that I really enjoy doing, never, ever dawned on me. Like, you hear stories about people that make a living doing this, but they're so few and far between, and they're rare. And don't get me wrong, I'm not making a lot of money doing this podcast, but I don't make a lot of money writing either. It's just the thing that has changed over 2019 is I make more podcasting than I do writing. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to stop writing, because that's not something that I'm capable of doing. Stories will pour out of my head whether I want them to or not. That's just the nature of who I am as a person. But at the same time, I feel like I should start taking the podcast more seriously than I have in the past. Now, it's not that I don't take this seriously. I mean, in the months leading up to NaNoWriMo, I knew that I was going to be writing and not have the time really to record shows. So I pre planned and got everything set up so that episodes would continue to come out. And I enjoyed that process a lot. I love doing this show. I love talking to you, and I love the feedback that I do get from you all when that happens. So I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to be doing next year. And some of what I'm thinking about, and it's why I decided to dedicate an entire episode to this, because after all, I do this show for you as much as I do it for me. I mean, there's no point in me sitting here talking into a microphone if nobody's listening, is there? I mean, it's just an odd use of time. And so I just wanted to kind of go over some of my thoughts for what I could do going forward to make this show better. And if you like them or don't like them, you have a chance to give your feedback before any of the changes actually go into effect. Because that's only fair, isn't it? First of all, I have to give you all the warning. There's never going to be a time where I'm not going to just give random remarks about what's going on in my life, my mental health, or my writing process. Just because, well, that's who I am, and this podcast is a personal journal, and I like sharing those things about me. Mainly because, as I've learned over the years, there are people going through some of the same struggles and trials and tribulations that I am, and it tends to help when you don't feel alone. I know that for myself, and if I can help just one person feel better, then I'm going to continue to do that. But I've also been thinking a lot about trying to do more essay-like content. I don't do it that much for this show, and it's not because it would take more time or anything like that. It's just, it's difficult coming up with a large amount of content on an essay format. And I know from experience that every time I've tried to take this podcast weekly from daily, both you all don't like it and I get contacted about it, and I don't like it because I enjoy taking the time to talk to you on a regular basis. So I'm not going to be able to pull back to weekly, but that doesn't mean that I can't start planning out weekly essay type podcasts. And I'm kind of looking forward to that. I haven't really played around with that format all that much, and I don't know exactly how that would look or sound different from some of the work that I've already done. I can tell you right now, they would not be scripted. None of the things that I am looking forward to doing in the future are going to be scripted because, well, when I read off of a script, I become William Shatner. And if you don't believe me, listen to the trailer for this podcast. That's the best take. Yeah, I don't do well reading off of a script. I really don't. I try, but that's not a talent that I have been given. So they wouldn't become scripted, but they would become much more focused and possibly broken up into series, so that we would start a series on various topics going forward that would have a definite beginning, middle, and end. And as such, it would be nice to know what topics you all would like me to cover. Like, I've experimented over the years, and especially over the last year, with a lot of different things, and one of the things that I've noticed is that, my major franchise stuff does better, but that doesn't mean that that's what I exclusively want to do. So while, yes, of course, I'm probably going to be talking about Star Wars and Star Trek and all of those things, and don't worry, I'm still going to be doing the random episode and series reviews. I don't know how to pull off a lot of that because at certain points of the year, there are too many shows and not enough episodes. So, I'm still working on finding the sweet spot there, which is why it's very good for you all to tell me what shows that you're interested in, because I know that there's some interest out there for His Dark Materials, and I did a couple episodes talking about it, and yeah, I am probably going to do one more because I have weird mixed feelings about the series. But that's where your input really comes in handy in helping me know what it is that you want to hear me prattling on about, because there's so many topics that I could discuss. And especially when we go into series, that's really something that you would like to hear a deep dive into. Because I can tell you the first one I'm probably going to do is on the Jedi, because there's been a lot of talk about that lately and it bothers me. One of the other things that I've noticed is that when I do an episode on music, it tends to have a much higher listenership than many of the other topics that I do discuss. I tend to refrain from talking about music because the contract that I've currently signed and my fear of DMCA takedowns does not allow me to actually play clips from the various songs that I would like to be talking about. So I find it difficult to figure out how to do that. And then I've been thinking to myself, I used to write album reviews. So what's the difference between a written album review where I'm not actually putting in the sheet music and doing a discussion where I just talk about what's going on? Now, I'm not a music critic. I am not somebody who has been schooled in music theory, and I feel like I should say that up front, but I have very particular taste, and I think it would be a lot of fun to share that with you. So I am contemplating bringing back Music Mondays, and it's going to be a variety of bands and a variety of artists and a variety of genres, because I listen to a lot of different things. As long as that's something that you all think that you would be interested in. Because really, when I say at the beginning that I do this for the discussion, I do this for the discussion. I like the conversation that follows. So, some of the albums that I talk about may be brand new, some of them may be classics, but I think it would be fun to have discussions about them in the format that we do. And don't worry, there will still be, topics on writing and various topics from mythology, as those are topics that I just love talking about, and they're a big part of who I am. It's just figuring out how to systematize this so that you all get the most out of the, I hate this word, I'm so sorry for using it, but the content that I put out on this show. There's so much that we could be doing together, and my main goal is to make it as accessible and easy as it can possibly make it. Unfortunately, none of the podcast services and directories allow me to create playlists of the show like YouTube does, and that would be a wonderful feature to have so that I could easily put all of my episodes on various topics into collections that you could easily go back and reference. So I may start posting links to the episodes on the site, but I feel like that would be cumbersome. I don't know a good solution to this, and I would like to ask if anybody knows a good solution. Let me know. And please don't say just post the episodes to YouTube and then put them in playlists there. I've tried that. I tried that for quite some time. Nobody cared about this podcast on YouTube, and plus I'm already doing other things over there, and I don't want to clutter the channel up by putting all of these episodes over there. So that's the one option that I've already kind of ruled out, just because tried it didn't work, I didn't like it, nobody seemed to like it, and the cats are very adamant about that. I don't know if you can hear them in the background. So more than anything, what I want to do next year, in regards to this show, is make it more of a community series, As always, at the end of the episodes, I ask for your input and topics that you would like to hear discussed, and I love it when I get those. But also just trying to focus in and doing less. Well, I'm not going to say doing less because those are promises that I can't keep. Because if a bunch of news comes out, then I'm probably going to cover it. But not focusing so much on what is out currently, and trying to do more deep dive, interesting explorations of the settings and characters and franchises and mythos that we all tend to know. And even if we don't, maybe expose you to something new, something interesting, and something that you would enjoy that you have never heard of. I will do my best to make sure that I am bringing you the best content that I can, which is something that I try to do anyway, but I'm going to try to double down on that and really kind of find deeper topics to talk about, because one of the things that I have felt over the last year is that for some reason I've found so many things that I would like to dig into and so many things that I am interested in that I'm just kind of scratching the surface. I'm just kind of barely touching on a lot of the topics that do get brought up. And I feel like that is a disservice both to the concept that I am wanting to explore and to you as an audience, that you're not getting the depth that you should have, that you deserve. And so that, more than anything, I think is what I'm planning on doing on the way forward, is finding ways to deliver that depth in the best ways that I possibly can. And I'm not sure exactly what that will entail, and I'm not sure exactly how that will work out in the end, because there's part of me that wants to start interviewing people again, and I may look into that. I may work on that. If you know anybody that you think that would be a good guest for this show, or somebody that you think would want to be on the show, let me know. Because I'm not opposed to doing interviews. I have the software now that makes that a bit easier. And it's something that I have often thought about playing around with again. And it's something that, again, I haven't done for years. But do let me know what you think. Because I have so many things that I want to accomplish over the next year, from books that I want to write, books I want to get edited, from episode topics that I already have swimming through my head, to potentially additional podcasts that I would like to do to explore exactly what it is that I could do in this medium. And so, in the end, my promise to you is that the next year there will be more series. There will be more deep dives into various ideas from hopefully a wide spectrum of stories and settings and movies and hopefully books. Because I had a very dry year this year for books, and it's not because I didn't want to read a lot. I actually have quite a few books that I just haven't gotten around to reading because the reading slump is profound. But hopefully I'll be bringing you a lot more of that as well. Yeah, I really enjoy doing this show, and I thank you all so much for being there for me and with me. And I look forward to what we're going to be able to build together going forward, because I never, in my wildest dreams, imagined that there would be people that would listen to me talk. I was always the weird kid. I was always the kid that was told to shut up, that I talk too much. And the idea that I have found anybody who's willing to sit down or bike or walk or run or drive to work or whatever you're doing while you're listening. I know at least some of you told me that you listen to me in bed at night as you're falling asleep because you find my voice soothing. And that's interesting. But thank you so much. It's hard for me to express the joy that this brings into my life, and I hope it brings a little bit into yours. So look forward to one of the first series that we're going to be doing next week, or maybe later this week. into the Jedi and kind of really talking about this idea of, are the Jedi good or evil? Because I have strong feelings about this, and I see a lot of people talking about it. So, and I don't think I can cover all of my ideas in one episode. So, we're going to be talking about the Jedi. I definitely know that. So, thank you for listening. Thank you especially for listening to an episode like this, where it's less about a topic that you're probably interested in and more about where we're going as a show. But hopefully it's more for you about where we're going as a community. If you haven't already, please do take a moment to rate this podcast in whatever app you're listening to me on if you haven't already. And if you've made it this far, you're definitely going to listen to more. So don't forget to subscribe, because apparently that's the thing to remember to say on a podcast as well. If you have any questions, comments, or topics you'd like to hear discussed on the show, love to hear from you. In the show notes, you'll find a link to the voice message system. Keep it short, keep it clean so I can use it on the show. I would really, truly love to hear from you. If you'd rather hit me up on social media, I am C. Dorset on both Twitter and Instagram, and you can find links to everything that I do over at projectshadow.com. If you have $1 that you could pass my way, it really would help out a lot. Like I said, I make more off of the podcast than I do off of any of the things that I do, but I don't make enough to survive. So it really would help out. Especially, yeah. Anyway, thank you to everybody who already does that. In the show notes, you'll find a link to both my Patreon and the listener support. Anything that you can do really does help out more than you could ever possibly know. While you're there, just send me a message and let me know what you think the show should be, because I really do want your feedback on that. If you don't have any money right now or you don't feel like giving, that's perfectly all right. But if you know somebody you think might like this podcast or anything that I do, do share it with them. That helps out immensely as well. Thank you all so much for a 2019 that could have been truly awful, but you made it wonderful. Until next time, don't forget, have the fun. Bye.